当年到底发生了什么，才会使同族敌对？
长剑，你真的准备好了？行，高等尊者陨落的非常，找到你了。人类
对你的狩猎才刚刚
刀河，一枪法
开始。
糟糕，又一个宇宙霸主！
三师弟，一群废物，你终于来了。
Hello everyone, welcome to the SwallowedStar channel. Here, I will share spoilers for SwallowedStar episode 213. Remember, this is based on the novel, so it won't be 100% similar to the Donghua version. Okay, without further ado, let's dive right into the story. As soon as the meeting ended with a statement from the Primal Chaos City leader, the gates of the Pantheon Sanctuary opened, and thousands of Universe Venerables began to disperse casually. Luo Fong and his teacher, Master Jin Yan, walked out together, chatting with Venerable Bloody Wing, who explained that the highest council meetings were usually very short and efficient. Venerable Bloody Wing mentioned that the higher-ups of the human race didn't have time to beat around the bush, so the details of important missions were usually sent directly to each participant's virtual screen so they could study them independently right away. On their way out, Luo Feng accidentally overheard cynical whispers from other Venerables who considered him an easy target on the original star. They dubbed Luo Feng a walking treasure trove because rumor had it he was carrying at least 6 true treasures, including the incredibly rare soul type and flying palace types. Those Venerables figured that Luo Feng, whose power was still seen as only on par with a mid-tier universe Venerable, would become a prime target for super beings from other races who would definitely attack him on sight to snatch all those precious treasures. Once they reached the slopes of Thunder Island, Luo Feng listened to Venerable Bloody Wing's deeper explanation about the true horrors of the original star. As it turned out, the place was a brutally savage battlefield where even universe masters could die fighting over top-tier or pinnacle true treasures. Even though many top fighters had clone techniques to survive, the temptation of the treasures there still pushed them to risk everything in massive battles, because owning a high-tier treasure could make them practically invincible in the universe. Right in the middle of their serious chat, Venerable Nineblade suddenly approached Luo Feng with a super friendly attitude, putting aside his old pride. It turned out he had a specific motive. He wanted to borrow Luo Feng's armor-type true treasure to bring to the original star to boost his chances of survival. Venerable Nineblade even promised compensation in the form of 10 precious treasures and a formal contract via the virtual universe as a guarantee, since he was absolutely certain that Luo Feng wouldn't be crazy enough to go to that dangerous place himself. However, Luo Feng politely turned down the request, which instantly left Venerable Nineblade speechless because his assumption was completely wrong. Luo Feng made it clear that the reason he couldn't lend his treasure was that he planned to dive into the original star himself to test his own skills. Hearing this, Venerable Bloody Wing laughed and admitted that he actually had the exact same intention of borrowing a treasure from Luo Feng, but immediately dropped the idea once he saw Luo Feng's strong determination. Not long after Venerable Nineblade left, another important guest showed up. Venerable Gui Yi, Luo Feng's senior martial brother and a loyal disciple of the Primal Chaos City leader. Venerable Gui Yi came with a much more tempting offer, wanting to borrow Luo Feng's soul-type true treasure with a promise to give him a bonus of 3 other true treasures once the mission was over. This offer was insane because even a universe overlord might not have that much wealth. But once again, Luo Feng stood his ground and refused to lend out his combat gear to anyone. Luo Feng actually had a secret reason why he couldn't lend out his Tower Pearl. The item had already recognized his soul as its master and would actually endanger anyone else's life if forced. Even though Venerable Gui Yi warned him that without maximum protection, a regular universe Venerable would have a hard time surviving, Luo Feng wasn't fazed in the slightest by the risks. These repeated rejections were proof that Luo Feng had fully made up his mind to face the slaughter on the original star for his own glory and that of the human race. After Venerable Gui Yi left in disappointment, Luo Feng actually felt a bit bad, but he really had no choice because his Tower Pearl was a part of the star tower that had bound itself to his soul. Any universe, Venerable reckless enough to try and merge with that treasure would definitely die on the spot, so lending it out would just be a total disaster. Luo Feng chose to stay calm and focus on strengthening himself, hoping that during the 1,000 eras the original star was open, he could quickly level up to become a universe Venerable so his power would be more recognized by the higher-ups of other races. The news of Luo Feng's rejections spread like wildfire among the universe venerables, sparking a wave of harsh criticism and mockery. Many thought Luo Feng was being incredibly arrogant and basically asking for a death wish by recklessly entering the original star while still only at the Immortal level. They called him a walking treasure trove who would just be an easy meal for enemy races. Some even accused him of committing a major sin because if he died, humanity's precious treasures would fall into enemy hands, dealing a huge loss to the entire race. In the midst of this storm of criticism, Master Zhen Yan, as Luo Feng's teacher, gave him some final, highly emotional advice packed with strict warnings. The teacher realized that Luo Feng's ambition had slightly strained his relationship with two great universe overlords, Venerable Gui Yi and Venerable Bai Feng, over the treasure borrowing issue. Even though almost everyone on Thunder Island was waiting for Luo Feng to fail, Master Zhen Yan emphasized that he still believed in his disciple's potential and told him to prepare with all his might so he wouldn't give anyone the chance to mock him later on. To face the hellscape of the original star, Luo Feng relied heavily on the trump card left by his secret teacher, Sitting Mountain Guest, a suit of armor called the Force Armor. This armor wasn't just any ordinary treasure. It was a masterpiece on par with the Flame God Halberd and Original Soul given to Sitting Mountain Guest's previous disciples. The Force Armor was classified as a top-tier or even pinnacle true treasure with power far surpassing the Shiwu wings, and it was specifically designed to have perfect compatibility with Luo Feng's body, providing defense that was virtually impenetrable by any attack. Before actually plunging into the battlefield, Luo Feng decided to take a long journey to the territory of the Flame God race located in a remote area of the universe. To cover this insanely huge distance, he brought out another ultra-rare item from his collection, a flying palace-type ship called the Ancient Boat Galaxy. This flying palace treasure was way stronger and faster than any mechanical or biological spaceship, making it the absolute safest ride for Luo Feng to breach alien territories that might be guarded by enemy forces. Cruising through the dark universe in the Ancient Boat Galaxy felt incredibly satisfying for Luo Feng because its speed was just totally insane. By channeling his divine power, the ship could blast forward at up to 800 times the speed of light, a feat impossible for standard ship technology to achieve. For nearly 3 months inside the ship, shielded by a silver energy barrier, Luo Feng kept an eye on his destination's coordinates while admiring the sheer awesomeness of the treasure as it sliced through the darkness of the universe with peak efficiency. After enduring the long, exhausting journey through the dark universe, the Ancient Boat Galaxy finally started slowing down and exited into the vast, silent expanse of outer space. Luo Feng stood tall on the ship's deck, staring at the unfamiliar expanse of stars ahead of him, with eyes full of ambition. At last, he had officially arrived at the borders of the Flame God's secret region, the territory of the mysterious Flame God race, which would mark a crucial step in his preparations before truly entering the bloodiest battlefield on the original star. The Flame God race used to be part of humanity, but their leader, known as the Flame Emperor, chose to break away and build his own empire far, far away. Over millions of years, this race grew to be incredibly strong and aggressive under the protection of the Flame Emperor, who possessed invincible power. Even though they shared the same roots as humans, the Flame God race actually often teamed up with enemy races like the Bug race and Demon race to attack humanity, showing that there was some deep-seated bad blood between the two sides. Standing on the deck of the Ancient Boat Galaxy, Luo Feng realized this complicated history through armor fragments he often found on battlefields. He knew that the Flame Emperor was the second disciple of his mysterious teacher Zuoshan Ku, which meant the Flame God was actually his own senior martial brother. Since his goal was to retrieve the Force Armor that his teacher had left there, Luo Feng finally decided to stow away his giant ship and began manually teleporting straight toward the Flame God race's main hive. The territory of the Flame God race was super unique itself, consisting of 3 giant continents orbiting each other with diameters stretching for light years. In the center of these continents sat majestic palaces, surrounded by eternal flames in various colors from black to blue. The inhabitants also had seriously tough physiques, standing dozens of feet tall, with scaly skin and a single horn right between their eyebrows, perfectly reflecting just how aggressive and powerful the warriors of this race were. Inside the main palace, the Flame Emperor sensed Luo Feng's presence from afar, thanks to his abilities as a universe master who controlled the laws of space and time. The senior was annoyed because he felt Luo Feng was way too loyal to humanity, whereas he believed humans were just using Luo Feng for his talent. Truth be told, the Flame Emperor felt intimidated by the authority of their teacher Zuo Shan-Ke, but he still couldn't stomach the idea of letting a treasure as awesome as the Force Armor fall into the hands of someone still allied with humans. The Force Armor itself was a very special set of armor because it was created specifically by Zuo Shan-Ke for his third disciple, who was Luo Fong. Even though the Flame Emperor had held onto the armor all this time, he could never fully master its power because the law engravings carved into it simply weren't designed for him. Still, because the armor was leaps and bounds stronger than most top-tier true treasures, the Flame Emperor was reluctant to just hand it back and started looking for ways to make sure Luo Feng wouldn't be able to take it so easily. Crafty as he was, the Flame Emperor decided not to attack Luo Feng head-on to avoid pissing off Zuo Shan-Ke. Instead, he opted to sabotage his junior brother's journey. He used his power to seal the space ripples around his territory and mask the universe coordinates in the dark universe. By doing this, Luo Feng wouldn't be able to teleport and would be forced to fly manually, which technically would take him hundreds of years just to reach the main continent. Luo Feng, who was suddenly stopped dead in his tracks in the middle of a vacuum, immediately realized he was being messed with by his own senior. He found that the coordinates on his tracker had vanished and the entire space in front of him was tightly locked down, a technique even more impressive than anything he'd seen before. Even though he knew this was the Flame Emperor's stalling tactic to make him give up, Luo Feng understood his life was still safe, because the Flame Emperor wouldn't dare openly disobey their teacher's orders. Luo Feng didn't feel intimidated in the slightest, even if he had to travel for hundreds of years at sublight speed using his bioship. Chilling out with a glass of wine, he realized just how greedy the Flame Emperor was, having hoarded his force armor for billions of years, and now trying to block him by sealing space. To Luo Feng, a few hundred years was just like a short meditation session, and he was super confident that his persistence would pay off in taking back the treasure that was rightfully destined for him. On the flip side, the Flame Emperor, who was keeping an eye on Luo Feng's moves from his palace, started getting annoyed because his junior wasn't backing down even with the hidden coordinates. Feeling that Luo Feng was being way too stubborn, the Flame Emperor finally decided to take more extreme measures by leaking Luo Feng's location to the entire universe. This triggered malicious intent from all sorts of powerful beings, including a mysterious figure named the Third Elder of the Mud Frog race, a universe overlord willing to leave his peaceful life behind to fight over Luo Feng's soul-type true treasure. The news about Luo Feng hanging out in the Flame God territory blew up like a bomb across various major alliances, catching the attention of other bloodthirsty creatures. A giant nine-eyed mountain, who also happened to be a master of soul attacks, vanished from its spot right away to chase down Luo Feng, seeing him as incredibly juicy prey. The gossip spread crazy fast through the world of glory in the ancestral god sect, making Luo Feng the #1 hunting target for top-tier fighters across different races who were gearing up for the original star. The reaction among humanity itself was pretty mixed. A lot of them thought Luo Feng had either lost his mind or had a death wish for daring to walk into enemy territory alone. Luo Feng's sworn enemy, King Bark Mirror, was actually thrilled and celebrated the news, as he'd been waiting a long time for a chance where Luo Feng stepped out of human protection. To him, Luo Feng showing up in the Flame God territory right in the middle of this heated situation was an act of suicide that he was incredibly thankful for. The Flame Emperor didn't just sit back either. He invited a universe overlord from the 9 Territory Alliance named Venerable Ba Feng to his palace. Venerable Ba Feng was an illusion master who was absolutely lethal to opponents weaker than him, and the Flame Emperor asked him to get ready to intercept Luo Feng if the other races failed to kill him. The Flame Emperor bluntly ordered Venerable Ba Feng to murder Luo Feng without mercy, simply because he couldn't stand seeing a human walk away with a precious treasure from his domain. Even though Venerable Ba Feng felt totally confident he could finish off Luo Feng easily, the Flame Emperor stayed cautious and chose to wait for the attacks from other races first, using them as a test for Luo Feng. It was as if the Flame Emperor wanted to give Luo Feng one last chance to back down right then and there before hunters from all corners of the universe swarmed his position. Deep down, though, the Flame Emperor genuinely wanted to see if his junior brother actually had the chops to survive being surrounded by all these top-tier beings. Inside his ship, Luo Feng started getting a barrage of emergency warnings through the virtual universe from his friends like King Thousand Rain and his teacher, Master Zhen Yan. They were all panicking because they knew Luo Feng's exact coordinates had been leaked and the whole universe was currently zeroing in on his location for a massive manhunt. Even though the situation had definitely hit extreme danger levels, Luo Feng responded to the warnings calmly, acting like he had already anticipated that this trip was going to be one massive life or death test. Back in the main palace, the Flame Emperor and Venerable Ba Feng kept monitoring Luo Feng's super chill movements through the space ripples. Suddenly, Luo Feng activated the God Country Transportation technique, making Venerable Ba Feng think the fugitive got spooked and was planning to run back to human territory. But surprisingly, Luo Feng only sent his immortal slave away while he stayed put inside the bioship, continuing to push forward into enemy lines. This reckless move made the Flame Emperor smirk cynically, feeling that his junior brother was really putting his life on the line amidst a swarm of hunters. Things got even more intense when 3 heavyweight universe overlords arrived on the scene almost simultaneously to hunt down Luo Feng's treasures. There was the Demon Wing leader from the demon race who looked like a giant winged snake, Frog the Wise, a tough leader from the Mud Frog race, and Venerable Ma Sha, known for his insane destructive power. All 3 shared the same ambition, to snatch all of Luo Feng's true treasures, especially the super rare soul type. They didn't care about each other at all and were solely focused on Luo Feng's coordinates that were already plastered all over the universe. The cunning Flame Emperor then decided to switch up his tactics by shrinking the range of his space seal down to just 100 light-years around the mainland of the Flame God race. Even though this looked like he was making it easier for Luo Feng to arrive faster, it was actually a trap so the hunters could instantly teleport in and corner Luo Feng in a much tighter space. It was as if the Flame Emperor was setting up a slaughter stage for Luo Feng, punishing him for being too ambitious and wanting the force armor he kept. Luo Feng noticed the space seal shrinking and immediately took advantage of the opening, teleporting multiple times to cut down a trip that should have taken hundreds of years. But right as he crossed into the boundary of the still-sealed area, the Demon Wing leader managed to intercept him and instantly gave chase at high speed. The roaring sound of the giant snake's divine power echoed through the vacuum, warning Luo Feng that he wouldn't be able to escape the clutches of the Venerables who were thirsting for those treasures. The Demon Wing leader tried to stop Luo Feng's escape by unleashing a law domain technique that locked down the laws of time within a radius of tens of millions of miles. However, the highly experienced Luo Feng instantly burned his divine power to maintain his top speed so he wouldn't get trapped in that time zone. He even had the chance to scoff at the attempt of the Demon Wing leader, declaring that an ordinary law domain technique wouldn't be nearly strong enough to stop him, although deep down he was on high alert after sensing the presence of other, far more dangerous hunters. Shortly after, Frog the Wise and Venerable Ma Sha showed up and joined the wild chase, creating fierce competition among 3 universe overlords fighting over the same prey. Feeling he had the upper hand, Venerable Ma Sha instantly activated his trump card, the 90 million Sand River Domain, a domain-type treasure that filled the space with millions of indestructible, deadly sand grains. This technique wasn't just aimed at locking down Luo Feng's movements, but also at blocking the Demon Wing leader and Fraud the Wise from stealing the loot he was after. An incredibly powerful giant sand vortex started surrounding Luo Feng's position, packing enough force to crush a venerable overlord in an instant. Venerable Ma Sha laughed triumphantly as he poured all his power into attacking Luo Feng, completely convinced that the treasure of the Blade River King was about to fall into his hands. From a distance, the Flame Emperor just watched the slaughterhouse drama with cold eyes, feeling that the tragic fate currently befalling Luo Feng was the logical consequence of his reckless bravery in chasing the force armor. Amidst the massive sand vortex from the 90 million Sand River Domain technique, Luo Feng's body seemed to shatter into pieces in an instant. Venerable Ma Sha shouted with joy, totally sure that the Blade River King was dead and all his treasures would soon be his. However, that excitement quickly turned into massive confusion when he sifted through his sand and couldn't find a single true treasure left behind, as if his prey had just vanished into thin air. Shockingly, Luo Feng's figure reappeared thousands of miles away, looking completely fresh without a single scratch on him. As it turned out, Luo Feng had used his Mosha body's special talent technique, called Domain and Ability, to merge with space and instantly swap positions, even when space was sealed. This technique made the universe overlord's eyes pop because survival skills like this were usually only found in ultra-rare special life forms across the universe. Seeing Venerable Ma Sha's epic fail, the Demon Wing leader and Frog the Wise actually laughed at their peer with a mocking tone. They realized that without the power of a universe master who could fully control space and time, it would be downright impossible to catch Luo Feng in his domain technique. Feeling like there was zero hope left to snag the loot, the two venerables chose to back off and leave, stranding a furiously exploding venerable Ma Sha all by himself in the void. Inside his ship, Luo Feng flashed a sly smile because he had actually prepped a foolproof backup plan long before stepping into the Flame God territory. He had secretly sent his golden-horned beast body to haul all his precious true treasures, like the Tower Pearl and Shiwu wings, safely back to human territory. So, the body currently being chased around by hunters wasn't carrying any loot at all, meaning Luo Feng could fight and run without an ounce of baggage. The Flame Emperor, watching from afar, grew even more furious at the hunter's failure and decided to shrink the Space Seal's range again so other hunters could intercept Luo Feng easier. However, Luo Feng casually handled his senior brother's devious tactics, employing a combination of teleportation and his domain technique. Every time a new hunter got close, Luo Feng would quickly vanish and reappear way ahead, leaving his pursuers feeling incredibly frustrated. The Flame Emperor's rage finally exploded out of control inside his palace, terrifying his loyal follower, Venerable Ba Feng, who was practically kicked out of the room. The Flame Emperor felt deeply humiliated that all the traps he had laid out completely flopped against an Immortal level fighter. He started to realize that he wouldn't be able to hold on to the force armor any longer and would have to accept that the treasure was going to fall into Luo Feng's hands, exactly as their teacher, Sitting Mountain Guest, had planned. Despite still being super salty about it, the Flame Emperor finally stopped messing with Luo Feng's journey and chose to shift his focus to the opening of the original star, which was just around the corner. He hoped to score a new true treasure there to replace the force armor that was about to be reclaimed by its rightful owner. Meanwhile, Luo Feng kept blazing forward with full confidence toward the Flame God race's main base, ready to claim what was his and prove that he deserved to be one of humanity's pillars of strength. The news about Luo Feng's domain escape technique instantly blew up across the universe, triggering harsh reactions from his enemies. Figures like Venerable Pei Feng and King Barkmere felt totally humiliated and frustrated, realizing they had been underestimated this whole time by a mere Immortal level fighter. Meanwhile, the human race celebrated the news since the technique gave Luo Feng a much higher safety net, even though the higher-ups kept reminding everyone that the domain technique could still be broken by special life forms capable of absolute space and time control. For Luo Feng himself, the domain technique was just a temporary tool because his main focus was always getting the force armor back. He knew that in the world of super beings, respect could only be earned through real combat power, not just the ability to run away from enemies. To him, the force armor was a god-tier treasure that could even spark bloody wars among universe masters, so he was willing to take any risk to pry that legendary armor from his greedy senior's hands. 10 years passed, and right before the gates of the original star opened, the Primal Chaos City leader gave Luo Feng a crucial final warning. His teacher revealed the dark side of the Flame Emperor's past. He was a former human genius who betrayed his race because he was incredibly selfish, arrogant, and ungrateful. The Flame Emperor was known as someone who only remembered other people's flaws, but forgot every single kindness he ever received. He even had the guts to attack his own racemates just to rob them of their belongings. The highly anticipated moment finally arrived when 10,081 portals to the original star opened simultaneously across the universe, surging with energy far beyond the power of a universe master. This event marked the kickoff of a massive slaughter festival where billions of races would kill each other fighting over dropping treasures. The Flame Emperor dove right into the battlefield as well, hoping to find a replacement for the force armor that he'd soon have to hand over to Luo Feng for the absolute orders of their secret teacher, Sitting Mountain Guest. During his 100-year journey to the Flame God race's territory, Luo Feng diligently honed his understanding of space laws within his ship. He successfully mastered the second mystery, the Space Seal, and was super close to finishing the third mystery called Strangulation, a Rapid Progression, that brought him ever closer to leveling up to a universe venerable. Between his training sessions, he watched apocalyptic battle recordings from the original star where hundreds of venerables and dozens of universe overlords died in no time flat, proving just how terrifying that place really was. The brutality of the original star was even more intense because it was the only territory completely cut off from the virtual universe, leaving the fighters totally isolated in a death trap. Without the maximum protection of the force armor, Luo Feng felt he'd just be an easy target, constantly getting pushed around on a battlefield littered with deadly traps. This reinforced his belief that heading to the Flame God race was the smartest move he had to make before actually throwing himself into that massive bloodbath. Long story short, after a century-long trip, Luo Feng finally arrived right in front of the Flame God race's main base, only to be immediately blocked by an Immortal warrior who felt offended that Luo Feng dared to call out their leader so loudly. Even though the warrior was way out of his league in terms of power pressure, he still showed high fighting spirit to defend the Flame Emperor's honor. Luo Feng didn't let his emotions get the better of him, and instead threw shade at the Flame Emperor to stop hiding, because as the master of space and time in that territory, there was no way the Flame Emperor couldn't hear his voice. Not long after, Venerable Ice Deuteron showed up, a single-horned universe venerable who tried to act all diplomatic and welcomed Luo Feng with a fake smile. He made the excuse that the space seal that had been giving Luo Feng a hard time earlier was actually just a race security protocol that was now specially open to welcome their guest. Luo Feng could only laugh on the inside, knowing damn well that was just a lame excuse to cover up the sabotage the Flame Emperor had pulled earlier to stall his trip. Luo Feng was then escorted to a secondary palace instead of the main palace where the ruler actually was. Venerable Ice Deuteron asked Luo Feng to wait, claiming the Flame Emperor was currently busy on the original star hunting for treasures. Even though Luo Feng felt this was just a super childish stalling tactic, he chose to stay cool and play along to respect the status of their teacher, sitting mountain guest. Luo Feng's wait turned out to be anything but brief. He had to sit tight for over a year inside that palace while enjoying all sorts of luxurious meals. Luo Feng was fully aware that the Flame Emperor was intentionally manipulating him and teaching him a lesson about seniority. On the flip side, the Flame Emperor really was monitoring the situation on the original star, but his main goal was still to tame Luo Feng's arrogance before they finally went face to face. After what felt like forever, the vibe suddenly turned super intense when a massive wave of divine power blanketed the entire palace area. The Flame Emperor finally made his entrance as a giant scaly figure radiating an incredibly thick aura of arrogance from deep within his soul. Even though he shrunk his body down to match Luo Feng's size, his gaze was still super condescending, looking at him like a newbie who just learned how to crawl in the world of super beings. Instead of getting straight to the point, the Flame Emperor launched into a long-winded, preachy lecture about how lucky Luo Feng was. He stressed that all the success Luo Feng had achieved was purely thanks to the help of their teacher, Sitting Mountain Guest, so he shouldn't be feeling too proud of himself. The Flame Emperor even advised him to hurry up and become a universe venerable, so he wouldn't embarrass their teacher's good name, a superior attitude that made Luo Feng feel pretty uncomfortable, though he still did his best to hold himself back. When Luo Feng finally called in the promise to take the force armor, the Flame Emperor immediately brought out his crafty excuses to keep holding onto the gear. He argued that Luo Feng, still stuck at the Immortal level, was way too weak to use the force armor's full power and was actually risking danger if he took it away. The Flame Emperor suggested that he should just keep the super armor for Luo Feng's safety, promising to hand it over directly only once Luo Feng had successfully leveled up to a universe venerable someday. The situation inside the palace intensified as Luo Feng became increasingly frustrated with the Flame Emperor's insincere excuses. The senior kept pressing Luo Feng with his soul power, insisting that the armor was just too valuable and risked getting lost if carried by an Immortal level fighter. Even though he was being pressed down by an aura as heavy as a giant mountain, Luo Feng's determination stayed rock solid because he knew the force armor was his rightful property prepared by their teacher. Seeing his senior remain completely stubborn, Luo Feng finally dropped a lethal bluff, threatening to report this whole mess directly to Sitting Mountain Guest. He stated that if their teacher actually agreed that the armor should stay with the Flame Emperor, he would walk right out and never bother him again. This threat instantly made the Flame Emperor panic, realizing he didn't have a solid enough excuse to disobey the absolute orders of the teacher he feared so much. Not wanting to drag out his problems with their teacher, the Flame Emperor finally caved and pulled out the force armor, which glittered like a beautiful diamond. Luo Feng didn't waste a second and immediately engraved his soul mark into the super armor, soaking up all the ancient info flooding his mind about the item's insane power. After getting exactly what he wanted, Luo Feng quickly said his goodbyes and teleported out of the palace to dodge any more of his senior's dirty tricks. After Luo Fong vanished using the God Country transportation technique, the Flame Emperor could only stand dazed on his palace balcony, mulling over his junior brother's incredible talent. He admitted that Luo Fong was a rare breed who had managed to survive the Star Tower legacy and achievement practically impossible for normal beings. Still, the Flame Emperor's ambition kept burning bright. He was determined to keep training until he hit the true god level so he could stand on equal footing with Sitting Mountain Guest. Meanwhile, Luo Feng's Mosha body was rapidly traveling thousands of light years back to human territory in the Ganwu universe country. Thanks to the space-hard ability he had absorbed earlier, the Mosha body could now teleport hundreds of light years in a single breath, putting him on par with universe venerables. In practically no time, he successfully pierced through the intermediate space and slipped back into his vast god country to make his final preparations. Floating above the majestic remote ocean, Luo Feng finally tried equipping the force armor directly onto his human body. The transparent armor automatically merged with every muscle fiber and internal organ, injecting him with physical strength that felt incredibly mighty and limitless. Luo Feng realized that the force armor's real charm lay in its ability to resonate with its user's physical toughness, meaning the stronger Luo Feng's body was, the crazier the defense and attack power the armor would churn out. To test out the armor's limits, Luo Feng then transferred the force armor to his golden-horned beast body. The legendary gear instantly enveloped the monster's body with an intimidating glow, creating a totally lethal combo of defense and attack. Now having full ownership of the force armor, Luo Feng felt super confident about stepping onto the original star battlefield and shutting up anyone who had ever doubted his power. Having successfully secured the force armor from the Flame Emperor's grip, Luo Feng quickly hopped onto the virtual universe to say goodbye to his teacher, Master Zhen Yan. At the foot of Thunder Island's mountain, he found his teacher busy partying and drinking with other venerables, completely hyped up talking about the spicy rumors regarding the slaughterhouse on the original star that had just kicked off. One of the venerables, Venerable Quang Zhou, was telling a terrifying story about the appearance of a top-tier treasure called the Heavenly Gold Sail, which sparked a bloody war between universe masters. The brawl inside the ancient palace dragged on brutally for 6 years and wiped out half of all the fighters who went in there. This news served as a wake-up call for everyone that the original star, despite only being open for 100 years, had already become an extremely hardcore killing field for super beings. Right in the middle of this chatter, Luo Feng casually dropped his intention to head straight for the original star solo, without any alliance whatsoever. This statement immediately shocked the senior venerables there, and they tried to talk him out of it, thinking it was literally just suicide. Even though Luo Feng had a solid rep for making great escapes, they still felt that heading into such a cruel place without a backup team was a ridiculously reckless choice for an Immortal level fighter. Seeing Luo Feng's ironclad determination, Venerable Quang Zhou finally offered a helping hand by giving him a top-secret intel data file summarizing the events of the last 100 years on the original star. However, he still dropped a brutally honest warning that Luo Feng's chances of survival were less than 10% because his domain escape technique was already common knowledge, and enemy races had definitely prepped a counter for it. Without teammates watching his back, they predicted Luo Feng would just be a prime target who'd get boxed in way too easily. Luo Feng took the data calmly because he knew his enemies were totally clueless that he was now carrying the force armor, packing enough power to make him a walking fortress. He planned to use his Mosha body's transformation abilities to go undercover so his real identity wouldn't be recognized, keeping the enemy completely in the dark that they were actually dealing with the Blade River King. With the legendary armor now fused into his very cells, Luo Feng felt way safer than ever before. The awesomeness of the force armor crafted by Sitting Mountain Guest was honestly just insane, as its power relied purely on physical toughness rather than law comprehension. The armor had 3 incredible activation levels. At its peak, it could dampen physical attacks by up to 100,000 times and soul attacks by 10 times. This power made Luo Feng feel right on par with the Universe Masters in terms of defense, even if he had to tank a hit from a high-tier treasure. And so, the universe's ultimate slaughter festival officially kicked off, with thousands of portals swallowing up the heavy hitters from all sorts of races as they fought over the loot. As those portals pumped out energy way crazier than a Universe Master's power, Luo Feng got ready to plunge headfirst into this wildly terrifying but opportunity-filled battlefield. Armed with the force armor and solid intel in hand, he set off with one absolute goal in mind, proving that he really is the main character. So what happens next? Let's wait and see in the next video, guys. Okay, Thank you for watching until the end, and don't forget to support this channel with likes, subscribe, and comments. That's all from me. Bye.
开始。
糟糕，又一个宇宙霸主！
三师弟，一群废物，你终于来了。